Black Owl wanted to attack the protagonist, but he had already prepared and was waiting for the attack. Immediately, Tekui's hammer flew in and beat off the owl's whip tail, which even surprised Zhang Lan. Tekui was injured and asked why he was frozen, because he had to dodge. The protagonist, looking back, asked her not to worry, because all the most dangerous things are behind her and that she fasten her seatbelts. Qin was surprised, and Owl thought again that it was a bluff. Zhang strained his arm and, preparing to use his strength, shouted that they were going to kindergarten. Owl and Qin were at a loss. He wanted to hit, but nothing happened and Zhang himself was surprised. The system reported that the current energy reserve is 0% and it should be charged on time. The protagonist asked why she was only talking about it now. Owl noted that he had had enough fun. Now Qin can relax. Qin himself exhaled, because he had scared and almost fooled him again. Immediately, he remembered about the improved stockings of the current. If she takes a hot pose and he touches her, his energy will recharge. But she has a leg injury. But he immediately said that she could handle it. He ran to the girls and shouted the name Tekui. And you were surprised. He said it might hurt a little, but she had to do it, and the girl was surprised and embarrassed. Immediately there was a strong explosion and the protagonist flew away. Qin smiled maliciously and said that no matter what he wanted to do, he would not succeed. The protagonist was lying on the floor and was angry. He saw that the girls were unconscious and he did not know how to charge the divine body now. He can't ask the Empress to put on a uniform to seduce him in front of everyone. If he reads adult magazines now, the charging will be too slow and they won't give him a chance. He panicked and asked God to send him a girl. At the same moment, Qin hit the night owl and broke the illusion seal, causing it to spit blood. A moment later, the owl flew forward and fell. Zhang Lan was surprised that they started fighting each other. Qin thanked fellow Taoist for helping him solve the problem with the Jade Goddess clan. Now it's time to solve the problem with him. The head was angry that Qin had really attacked his warrior in the back. And the head of the Qin clan replied that this was a competition, and it was not worth showing kindness here. The owl mask began to break and fall to the ground. It turns out that the night owl is a beautiful girl and she turned around and said that Qin is a traitor. Qin started laughing at her and told her to blame herself for being too stupid. The protagonist was surprised that the night owl was actually a girl. He was very glad that this was a god's offering, because a girl appeared. The owl was angry and threw knives at Qin. He just jumped up and said it didn't pose any threat. He rushed straight at her and shouted that this was the end for her. He hit the ground with all his might, but the protagonist managed to save the girl. Immediately, they both fell down and started screaming. The judge noted that Zhang Lan had saved the night owl, and he assumed that they had decided to join forces at the last minute, but it's unlikely to help them. Qin was angry and said that he wanted to play with Zhang more, but apparently he was begging him to die. The owl slightly damaged his pants and asked the protagonist what he was doing, because she didn't need help. Zhang asked if she was willing to let that bastard win. If she was willing to help, he could beat him. The owl thought about it and asked how she could help. Qin rushed forward and shouted that the time for requests was over. Immediately, a large cloud of smoke appeared and Qin was surprised. The judge suggested that Zhao Lan had used a smoke bomb and that he wanted to stall for time. The judge shouted that Qin Yun did not dare to act rashly, which meant that Zhang's tactics had worked. Qin was angry and thought that he had just taken a break and he wanted to beat the judge after the competition. The owl turned to the protagonist and asked what he was doing. Zhang took out her clothes and told her that her clothes were torn and she had to put them on. The girl got angry and thought that he just wanted to humiliate her. The protagonist replied in denial and said that it was difficult to explain, but as long as she wore it, he could defeat Qin Yun. The owl grabbed the clothes and said that it was nonsense, because she had long heard that the disciples of the Jade Goddess clan showed attraction to their gender. Today she has proof of this. She would just drop it so that everyone could understand clearly, and the protagonist shouted at her not to do it. The girl touched the suit and was surprised. She began to examine it and said that she had never seen such a smooth texture. She wondered if she would wear it, how silky it would be. The protagonist agreed with her and said that she should try on a costume. The girl began to undress. She agreed to try on a costume, and the protagonist saw all the charms of the girl. He is very excited and the divine body begins to charge. Qin started laughing and shouted that he saw them and rushed forward. He put the force forward and added that he had won. Immediately, the protagonist simply destroyed his ability with his fist. He asked not to worry, because the competition has just begun. And the owl was embarrassed, because the skirt is too short. His divine body charge, 120%. She did not understand why she was ashamed and happy to wear such revealing clothes. The judge did not understand what was going on here, because the night owl suddenly changed into an unprecedented outfit. The audience noted that she was too far away, and they couldn't see clearly. Another guy asked what she was wearing, and the third one got excited. The Empress was angry, because she did not understand what they were both doing in the smoke. Qin was surprised that Zhang deflected his roaring tiger fist with just one hand. He didn't understand how he did it. The girl was very ashamed, and the protagonist replied that he looked cute. Zhang was surprised by his words and replied that such a soft blow, he thinks it should be called the fist of a domestic kitty, and the owl began to laugh. The protagonist noted that this girl looks fierce, but she has a pleasant laugh and pretty big balls. Immediately, the system reported that the divine body was charged at 150% and he should immediately release energy. The protagonist quickly turned away and the girl was surprised. Zhang knew that if he looked at it again, it would be fatal. Qin was very angry and shouted how dare he slander his unique skills. He'll tear his mouth apart. Immediately, the protagonist rushed straight to him and was already near him. He hit him very hard and said that Qin was a chatterbox. He asked if he wanted to fight. Why is he talking so much nonsense? The judge shouted that Qin Yun had been knocked down. Zhang Lan suddenly became powerful, and he showed tremendous strength again. Qin stood up and noted that he obviously had power, and asked why he hadn't shown it before. The protagonist replied that he just wanted to tease him and asked if she couldn't. Qin rushed forward and shouted at him not to think that he would be afraid of him just because his strength had recovered. He decided to use genuine Dan to its full potential. He quickly started throwing quick punches and screamed. The protagonist easily beat off all the punches with one hand and noted that he was too weak and asked if Qin could do it only after taking doping and if he had kidney failure. Qin was very angry that his eyes were crazy. He took out his sword and shouted that it was his own fault, and the protagonist was surprised. The Empress noted that it was a Demon Slayer sword and asked if the head had really given his disciple a Demon Slayer sword that contained enough power to destroy the world. The head replied that it was an ordinary weapon and she should not make a fuss. Qin tried to hit Zhang and shouted. A huge beam flew towards the protagonist. The clan heads started discussing it. The first one laughed that Zhang did not shy away, so this time he will definitely win. The second one said that although it took too much effort, at least the Jade Goddess clan would not be able to attract everyone's attention. The third one said that unless he had an ancient divine weapon, the Gyuan sword, but that was impossible. The protagonist took out that most ancient divine weapon and repelled Qin's attack and noted that they were so pompous. Qin was very surprised and did not understand where she got it from and considered it a scam. And all the chapters were just in shock. Everyone was surprised when they saw the Gyuan sword, because the ancient magic weapon was here and it was in the hands of the Jade Goddess clan. Someone did not know if there were still powerful treasures in the Jade Goddess's clan. The Empress got angry and asked why they were looking at her, because they should be looking at the competition. The heads were surprised and did not know. She is so rich that she keeps such a fortune a secret. Qin shouted that he would not let Zhang win and put his blood on the sword. The judge realized that he was summoning the sword demon with essence and blood. Qin Yun is going to perform his final trick. As soon as this move is made, someone will definitely die. Qin has shown what it means to never give up. Then the whole audience started rooting for Qin Yun and added that down with Zhang Lan. They were all for Qin Yun. The owl realized that tens of thousands of people were screaming at the same time. Anyone would be offended by this. Even if Zhang Lan has a magic weapon to protect herself, she is afraid that the hostility of the crowd will embarrass him. Immediately, the protagonist struck with his sword at the place where the audience was sitting, which shocked everyone. The protagonist was angry and told them not to force him to cut them all. The owl thought she was thinking too much. The judge shouted that he had attacked the audience and threatened it. As a judge, he wanted to do something. But he looked at the very evil protagonist and was confused. He changed his face and said that Zhang should win the game. The Jade Goddess clan would win. Attacking the weak and fearing the strong, the judge has the true character of a pet dog. Qin was shocked, because this arena was built of black reinforced concrete. Even if he attacked with all his strength, it would be difficult to create even a gap, but he cut the arena with a random blow. Even if he donates his blood, he won't be able to win. He understood that to take a step was to die, and he did not understand what to do. The protagonist viciously said that he had only two options left, to die or to surrender. Qin smiled and said he was giving up and laughed. There is no shame in giving up or losing one day. The judge shouted that Qin Yun had surrendered, and the head of his clan got angry and called him a cowardly bastard. The referee said that in other words, the final winner of this game becomes. But before he could finish, he asked what was going on between Zhang Lan and the Night Owl. The girl thought that he was mocking her, because she did not have such abilities and she also gave up. The judge shouted that the Night Owl had also surrendered, which means that Zhang Lan is the ultimate winner. He announces that the Jade Goddess clan is the final winner of this year's 6 Clans Martial Arts Improvement Conference. Immediately, Qin started spitting blood and covered himself with his hand. He fell to the floor and spat even more, and these two were embarrassed. The protagonist approached him and said that this was a negative reaction due to the power he had not released after the blood sacrifice. Immediately, the Night Owl shouted to Zhao Lan to be careful. The head of the clan rushed at him saying that his disciple had already surrendered, but she killed him anyway. The head hit the protagonist right on the chest, and the system reported that he had 20% energy protection left. Immediately, the protagonist jumped back and turned over. The head said, "That is the master. He must administer justice today." The protagonist was in great pain, and immediately everyone saw that the protagonist was not a girl, but a guy. The Empress realized that they had been discovered and became angry. Immediately, everyone was surprised and did not understand why Zhang Lan's clothes were stuffed with buns. The protagonist quickly turned away and said that his clothes were torn. The head noted that this is a man disguised as a woman. He thought it was a joke. He began to laugh because he remembered that the Jade Goddess clan, which claimed that it never allowed men to enter the mountain gate, allowed a man to fight for the clan. Owl was confused when she realized that Zhang was a man because Owen had just changed clothes in front of him. Another head noted that, alas, it turns out that they did not invite help from their clan, and this is really upsetting. A third added that they weren't so virtuous after all. What a reputation the Jade Goddess clan has left among the 6 sects. Their words made Empress Xuaniao angry. The head of the Qin clan turned to Zheng Xuaniao and said that she should give an explanation to the whole world in front of the 5 clans. The Empress assumed that the Jade Goddess clan would be eliminated from the 6 clans. She stood up and said that now that it was revealed, the protagonist was eating a bun and was surprised by the words of the head and called him a pompous asshole. He asked if the Lingyuan clan chooses the clan master based on who is the most shameless among them. The head asked him who he was to speak here. He would deal with him later. The protagonist shouted that he just likes to interrupt. He tore off his clothes and said he was a dumbass. When the Jade Goddess clan explicitly said that men could not join it, the judge said that he only knew that there were no men in the Jade Goddess clan. But the rules of their clan don't seem to specifically say that men can't join it. The bald man added that after so many years, everyone was used to it. The head got angry and asked why he had disguised himself as a woman, because it was obvious to him that they wanted to deceive everyone. Zhang said it was his little hobby and asked if it wasn't abnormal. When he said that he was a female student, the protagonist decided to sacrifice his reputation for the sake of the clan. Zheng Xuaniao, I owe him. The head was very angry and asked if he thought he was an idiot. Still wants to deny such an obvious thing. The protagonist asked her to stop talking nonsense. If he says they broke the rules, then show proof. Did the Jade Goddess clan promise not to send male disciples to participate in the competition? Or they forbid people like him to feel? If they don't have proof, then they should shut up. The fat man noted that Zhang's tongue was hanging. Another thought it sounded like complete nonsense. But the third added that you couldn't argue with him, and also asked if his chest wasn't bulging too much. The head of the clan was angry and asked how dare he deny everything, because he was not born yesterday. And the 6 clans should not tolerate someone like him. The protagonist realized that this chapter did not understand the slightest hint. Zheng Xuaniao's internal injury has not healed yet, and Tekui and Yichai are still out. He understood that he would have to retreat. Immediately, someone appeared from above and said that the master of the Changrong clan said he wanted to see who is the real villain in this arena. This was the great disciple of the Jade Goddess clan, Long Wushwang. The Empress stood up and realized that Wushwang had ended her seclusion a month earlier, and did not understand how she managed it. The fat man got angry and asked where this student came from. It's impolite to speak in such an arrogant manner. She's not coming down yet. The protagonist was delighted and noted that this angle was good, but a little dark, and his body began to charge. Long Wushwang said that 5 trash clans conspired to cause trouble for her Jade Goddess clan. She asked if he really thought that there was no one capable in the Jade Goddess clan. The head got angry and shouted that it was nonsense and he should let her down. 3 guys immediately jumped out and agreed to do it, because they were already angry. The guy said they were law enforcement officers at a martial arts improvement conference. They advised them not to resist, otherwise she would put herself at risk. Long Wushwang was surprised and asked again. She rushed at them and asked, and that's what they tell her. The 3 of them immediately used the golden dragon array, but she broke through her shield with her power and took them down. A moment later, the 3 of them flew down, and the protagonist wondered what kind of shit the golden dragon was, such a fancy name, but couldn't stop a single blow. The protagonist realized that he didn't know anything about Long Wushwang. Zhang asked if she was so amazing. Al said that she is the strongest fighting force of the Jade Goddess clan. Once she stopped 30,000 aliens with her own strength. It is said that she is also the only one who has received the true legacy of the Jade Goddess clan's power. Her master said that her current cultivation base was probably comparable to the Empress base that was 10 years ago. The protagonist was surprised and said that he had a feeling that the Empress had always been ill, and asked if she had ever been so strong. The system said that the mysterious power of the Jade Goddess is the first miracle in the world. There are 9 stages in total. They get stronger and stronger as he moves up, but when he reaches the 8th stage, and breaking through it, he will gain the power to defy the heavens. Long Wushwang was able to break through the 5th stage. The Empress has already reached the late stage of the 8th stage, and she has only a little bit left. The protagonist noted that she talks about it so excitedly. The head shouted and said that she was doing well. She dared to kill his people. Today he would teach her the rules himself. Immediately, the deputy master of the Lingyun sect appeared, who asked the master to calm his anger. He asked if he didn't know that this Long Wushwang was the only daughter of the Long family. He was afraid that angering the Long family would not be good for them. The head was angry because he had completely forgotten about it. The head turned away and said that the competition was over. The deputy congratulated the Jade Goddess clan on winning this competition. The protagonist was surprised and asked if they weren't going to fight. The protagonist said that he needed to hurry up, and he started running to the girls, and the owl said goodbye to him. She blushed a little and thought that next time she would have to find out what was so special about him that allowed him to settle in the Jade Goddess clan. After winning the 6 clans competition, he suddenly turned into the hero of the Jade Goddess clan. Now, he can walk around the sect at will. It's just better to avoid these girls. They all looked at him and noted that he had a beautiful posture and a very cool gait. The third girl noted that he had amazing buns and she wanted to touch them. However, it is very strange that the system did not give him a new task for 3 days. He thought it was strange because the Jade Goddess clan, although it looked more like Yin Kai, he stood in front of a large building from which an unknown aura emanated and noted that it was not so demonic. The protagonist came to the door and the demon laughed. She was surprised that a man appeared in the Jade Goddess clan. Although the clan always claimed that they did not have men, Zhang said that he would go about his business and said goodbye to her. The demon asked him to wait and asked if he didn't want to come in and take a look. He asked her what it was about the sealed demon. She laughed and said that if he came in, she could tell him something about one big thing. The Empress. The protagonist also thought about her big balls. He immediately looked behind the door and said that her breasts were already majestic, but he did not know if there was another size. She was a beautiful, restrained blonde. She laughed and called him a bad brother, asked what he was thinking. She's talking about the Empress' big secret. She asked who he was, why he was in the Jade Goddess clan. The protagonist, closing the door, said that he most likely misheard. He is a kind of gatekeeper. The girl let her power into him and asked him to come closer, or else he was still afraid that she would eat him. The protagonist came in again and said that seduction did not work on him, and she could not waste her energy. She was surprised. The demon noted that Chang was a very interesting man. Even without temptation, he can see what she looks like now. She asked if he didn't just want to pounce on her. The protagonist replied that a month ago he would definitely have wanted it, but now he doesn't. He asked her to just be a good girl and that's it. She got angry and called him a smelly man who is only interested in the breasts of the Empress. She asked. He wasn't even going to look at her. Zhang asked her not to worry. He wouldn't be able to do it for another 2 days anyway, because he had had enough. He said he would come back to her in a few days when he was ready. Purple chains immediately appeared and wrapped around his neck. They squeezed his throat and the protagonist asked what was going on. She stood up and asked if he was surprised. The protagonist was surprised when he realized that the chains did not bind her. Zhang realized that she had lured him inside because she wanted him to open the door of the tower and immediately closed the door with his hand. The demon pulled him towards her and asked him not to rush to close the door. She did not plan to leave at all. The protagonist tried to pull out the chains and asked what she wanted to do then. The demon sat down next to him and said that she had said this from the very beginning. She just wants to do something bad to him. She began to cut his clothes and asked him not to worry, because she would not harm him in any way. He should lie down and enjoy it in peace. The protagonist was very confused when she began to undress and he asked for help and did not understand what kind of world this was. He did not understand if it was really so dangerous for the boy to go out alone. The girl said that no one would stop her. The protagonist did not understand what she meant and what she was up to. He was very scared and made a funny face. Immediately, he came to his senses and closed his eyes thinking that he couldn't let her do this. He decided to free himself completely. The girl tore his underpants and laughed angrily. Immediately, a yellow flash appeared, which blinded her. A huge yellow ray appeared from the temple, eclipsing the demonic aura at the same time. The girl wiped her eyes and noted that she did not expect him to be able to attack. Looking ahead, she thought he was gone. The protagonist appeared behind her and said that it was a rescue trick that he had practiced during his 18 years of solitude. Zhang immediately shackled her and the girl asked him to let her go. Zhang Lan only told her to put up with it. No matter how she moved, she would not be able to free herself. The demon asked if these 2 iron chains would be able to hold her. She advised him to kill her while he had the chance, otherwise she would be able to break free in half a day. The protagonist took another chain and asked her not to worry, because that's not all. The girl was confused and asked what he was up to. Immediately, the protagonist began throwing chains at her. He shackled her even more and the demon called him a pervert and hung him up. Then he decided to leave, said goodbye and thanked her for the compliment. And the girl screamed at him to let her go. The protagonist came out thinking, since this is a demon, why bind her with only 2 iron chains, and is the Jade Goddess clan so negligent in their actions? He said it didn't matter, it had nothing to do with him anyway. The goddess, watching the protagonist, laughed and noted that he was not only exceptionally talented, but also mastered the binding technique. It turns out that he is very experienced, but he was still careful during previous assignments. She decided to double the difficulty of all the tasks. After that, I show us the protagonist's room and he slept there. Immediately, someone called Zhang and he woke up. He went to the door and opened it to see Shawnee, who said that he was still asleep, so it was not surprising that something had happened. The protagonist was surprised and asked what happened. The evil girl told a little that a thief had entered the clan. Even the Empress's students were offended. She asked how he guarded the mountain gate, and the protagonist was even more surprised. The protagonist got dressed and following Shawnee. She added that in broad daylight the thief was able to enter the clan and then disappear without a trace. It's just terrible. The protagonist asked how many people there were. The girl replied that there were at least 10 people. The protagonist was surprised that 10 people entered the Jade Goddess clan in broad daylight. She said that now he knows why the Empress is angry. Zhang thought he was finished. He shouldn't have left here yesterday. From behind the doors, someone said that it was at least 10. Maybe there were even more of them outside. Otherwise, how could she not defeat them? Shawnee asked him not to talk nonsense when he came in. Zhang was confused when he heard a familiar voice. When he opened the door, he saw a statue and a demon. The blonde shouted that protecting the clan was useless and it was her own fault. She was confused and asked if she had seen what they looked like or what methods they used. She will immediately send someone to investigate. Shawnee told the Empress that she had brought Zhang Lan, and the girls turned around. Tekui noted that Zhang was guarding the mountain gate yesterday, and asked if he noticed any movement, and the demon was confused. The protagonist embarrassingly replied in denial. The demon was just in shock and didn't understand how he got here. The protagonist recognized this girl with the big balls. He didn't understand how this little demon could be the Empress' 6th disciple. Tekui asked Zohuo what was wrong with her. The girl replied that she was a little dizzy. The Empress said that Zhang Lan is the mountain guardian of her clan, and he is extremely strong. She had to tell him what had happened. He may have seen these thieves. The protagonist thought about it and realized that he had done all this alone, and did not know why she lied to everyone that there were 10 people. The strangest thing is why the Empress's 6th disciple is locked in a demon tower. Immediately, the system informed him that it would now give him the 8th task, and the protagonist was surprised, because he had not been given a new task for a long time. He must teach Zohuo to be a masochist within 10 days. The reward for completion is unknown, and the punishment is death by anal explosion. The protagonist was embarrassed by the demand and felt that this task was clearly beyond the scope. The blonde turned around and said as she left that she was tired and would talk about it later, but Tekui was surprised. Zhang asked shouting why he had never seen this student. She told me that she was the last demon fox. The entire demon fox clan was attacked by mysterious forces. Fortunately, the Empress was passing by and saved her. She always wanted to leave the clan and go for revenge, but as the last demon fox, she was stopped by countless people. Only in the clan can they ensure her safety. Later, when the Empress created a tower to contain demons, she was completely locked up in the clan. She was unhappy about this and often sabotaged the sect. The Empress often locked her in the tower so that she could reflect on her behavior. The protagonist was surprised and understood everything. He felt that it was no wonder that her seal in the demon tower was so weak. She turned out to be one of them. Immediately, Shawnee stood in front of the protagonist and said that he should remember to stay away from Zohuo. The protagonist was surprised and asked why. She said that over the years, Zohuo had been doing her best to leave the Jade Goddess clan. Whatever she does, the Empress will tolerate it. But there is a ban. If one day she breaks it, she will be expelled from the clan. In the ancestral training place, the disciples of the Jade Goddess clan master are strictly forbidden to engage in adult business with men. For violation, they will be excluded from the clan. And the protagonist was embarrassed. After that, the blonde stood on the roof and thought that this time she would definitely be able to successfully escape. She was licking her lips and wanted to get Zhang Lan. After that, the protagonist carefully looked around and looked over the wall. The protagonist remembered that Shawnee had told him that he had to control himself and not mess around. If Zohuo is expelled from the sect, she will have a sad end. He didn't know why the pressure was on him. Immediately, the protagonist noticed Zohuo's hand and was surprised. The girl tried to grab him and shouted that she had caught him, but he dodged. He quickly got up and ran forward. He didn't understand how she had managed to appear so quietly behind his back. Immediately, the girl grabbed his leg with a ribbon and asked where he was running to. The protagonist tried to break free and said that if it wasn't for the Empress, who would let her do such nonsense? The girl jumped up and shouted Nirvana. The protagonist quickly moved his legs away, and the girl fell straight to the floor and it hurt her. The blonde leaned against him and said that it hurt and invited him to come to her. The protagonist said that she should stop. She grabbed him by the lower part of his body and said that it was there and asked the monkey to let her touch his peaches. The protagonist replied that they were not peaches. She shouted that she had caught him and hugged him. He tried to push her away from him and Zohuo said that now she would see how he could escape now. Immediately, someone grabbed the girl and lifted him up. It was long and she asked her if it would be enough. The blonde started screaming and asked to let her go because she hates her. Long said that the deputy clan master should have already told him about Zohuo. The protagonist replied, that's why he would rather die than obey. Long praised him and told him to keep it up, while Zohuo shouted at her to let her go. After that, the empress took a bath in Shawning and Long came there. Shawning said Zohuo would not give up. They have to come up with the perfect solution. Long said that she was offering to castrate Zhang Lang to avoid trouble in the future, and Zhang Lang was thinking. The empress laughed and said that it didn't matter. It was also a test for Zhang Lan and they would wait and see. Shawning was surprised and asked why test Zhang Lan. She thought it was a test of his loyalty to the empress. At this time, the protagonist was hammering boards into the door of his room. He figured that now it was as hard as gold and no one would be able to enter. He wanted to see how she could come and molest him now. Immediately, a purple aura appeared through the cracks. The protagonist was surprised and did not understand what it was and thought it was a poisonous fog. The protagonist decided to meditate to distract himself. The demon was laughing and wanted him to have fun. The protagonist understood that he needed to stabilize his mind. Otherwise, the consequences will be unimaginable. The girl literally enveloped him in her illusions and asked him to open his eyes and look at her. She asked him what he was afraid of. Immediately, the protagonist turned out to be with the goddess and noted that he did not summon her and asked how he got here. The goddess replied that this system does not obey him. She said that if she wanted to appear, she would appear. She asked why he would call her. The goddess approached him and noted that this girl had taken the initiative. She had come to him herself. She did not understand why he was so cowardly. The protagonist noted that she even has popcorn ready. She just wants to watch the show. The protagonist knew that Zohuo didn't really like him. He doesn't want to sacrifice his body to do things like that. The goddess smiled because she did not expect that he had a pure mind. It's kind of interesting. She added that she was looking forward to it even more then. The protagonist saw the empress and Shawning lying on the bed together. His nose bled from excitement because these were the most beautiful girls of his clan. He covered his nose and noted that he couldn't take it anymore. Immediately, the door from the protagonist's house just flew out. The protagonist could no longer stand it and left the house. Zohuo stood in front of him. She laughed and noted that in the end her fox scent came in handy and it came out on its own. The protagonist looked at her with crazy eyes and excitement. He jumped right at her and she was a little surprised. She thought it had awakened the beast in him. Zohuo thought it was great. She smiled and said she was ready and they could start. Immediately, the protagonist released a huge beam from his hand. The girl turned around and asked what he had done. Zhang exhaled. The protagonist explained that he used his inner energy to force out this state. Now she won't be able to get him. The blonde noted that he really punched a hole in the defense holding back the demons, and he was surprised and began to panic. She thanked him and jumped over the barrier, and the protagonist asked her to wait. Zhang fell down and realized that he had just used too much force and his body had not recovered yet. He started to lose consciousness and thought it was over. After that, the protagonist was tied up and brought to the palace to the empress. Shawning said that as the guardian of the courtyard, he not only allowed thieves to enter, but now also destroyed the protective barrier, causing her sixth sister to escape. According to the rules, he should have been executed, but he won the honor of the clan at the Martial Arts Improvement Conference, so she can make an exception. The protagonist exhaled and considered that she had a conscience. Shawning said that she was being replaced by the imperial punishment, immediate execution. The protagonist shouted that they still wanted to kill him and he couldn't stand it. The empress said in denial, because he did not intentionally destroy the barrier. Shawning replied that this was already the minimum punishment that could be applied in accordance with the rules of the clan. The empress replied for nothing. She asked if the Jade Goddess clan had ever had a male disciple before. How can they use such a thing as imperial punishment? She was embarrassed by it. Shawning noted that she was hesitating. She's really hesitating. Shawning realized that she was really not indifferent to Zhang Lang. Long immediately appeared, who said that the most important task was to get her younger sister back first. She went to the Haiming Mountains, where demonic energy is most abundant, and cultivating the ghost fox demon technique would be more effective. Once she succeeds, her mind will be enchanted, and it won't be easy to save her again. The empress agreed with her and added that this was the most important thing right now. She turned to him and said that he had let her go, and therefore had to return her. This is the only way for him to correct his mistake. She asked what the deputy thought. Shawning replied that if the master thinks it will fix him, then she has no opinion. The protagonist agreed and said he would do everything in his power to get her back. Long added that both of them are enough to get her back. They don't need a lot of people. The girl grabbed him by the collar. Both flew out of the palace and flew towards the mountain. After that, they flew over the forest and Long continued to hold it. Zhang asked if she was sure that the two of them were enough. Long replied that cultivating Zohuo requires a lot of demonic energy. They can split up and find a place with the most demonic energy. The protagonist agreed with her and asked her to let him go, and she did it. Immediately, the protagonist flew down and he started screaming. He started hitting different trees and finally hit his face on a rock. The protagonist was in great pain and he noted that he should learn to fly. After that, he got up and noted that it seemed to him that no matter what world he was in, it was always possible to escape from home. Then he saw a big purple ray and understood everything. The protagonist saw Zohuo, who was in the form of a fox demon and was cultivating. Zhang crept up to her and stood behind a tree. He understood that while she was concentrating on her cultivation, he should knock her out with a stick. Immediately, she opened her eyes and they lit up with a purple flash. She used her power and hit the protagonist, and his stick broke. He crashed into a tree and was surprised, because it had only been 2 hours since she had escaped, and she could already send him flying with one glance. Then the demon stood up and walked forward. The protagonist realized that it was no wonder they wanted her back. She was just a monster destroying the world. Her current strength should still be at the 3rd heaven stage. If he gave it his all, he would still be able to control her. He quickly scanned the erotic magazines and was 100% charged. He agreed to fight her. The girl released purple energy into him and the protagonist himself began to glow yellow. Zhang repelled her attack with his shield and his charge decreased by 10%. He ran around her from behind and grabbed her with his feet and said she was caught. Immediately, the protagonist began to feel her balls and she was surprised. The girl was embarrassed and blushed, and the protagonist thought that they were so soft. It takes energy to control her, and this pose recharges him. He thought it was great. He would call it perpetual motion mode. Its charge has reached up to 110%. Immediately, he saw the girl's tail in front of him and was surprised. The tails grabbed him and pulled him away from her, and Zhang thought it was bad. The girl got very angry and turned around. He felt that this blow would definitely pierce through him. He decided to invest 50% in energy protection. Zhang created a shield, and the demon wanted to hit him. She struck, but her attack seemed to fly back and she took damage herself and was struck by lightning. The girl jumped away from him and started running away, and the protagonist asked her to wait. Finally, she shot fox poison at him, and the protagonist's eyes began to get angry. He closed his eyes and said that even without seeing, he would still be able to catch her and shouted for her to come here. Immediately, he grabbed her by her buns and was surprised. He didn't understand what his finger was hooked on. When he opened his eyes, he was very excited and confused. He felt that the indescribable horizons had expanded. Zohuo hit him and jumped in embarrassment, and he apologized. After that, we are shown an ominous cave. Someone from it felt the aura of a fox. After so many years of waiting, it finally happened. The last fox demon in the world. She will finally fall into the hands of the king. It was the Tiger King.